You're listening to Design Between the Lines, the only design and home furnishings podcast where we talk with the movers and shakers, industry innovators, and lifetime legends of the home furnishings industry. It's here that I get a chance to sit and chat with the influencers shaping the industry into what it is today, and to learn a little bit more about life in their world. Barclay Butera is an interior designer based in Newport Beach, California. Known for his approachable elegance and glamorous coastal chic interiors, Butera's passion for interior design began over 2 decades ago and has grown into an impressive lifestyle enterprise that is known and sought after around the world today. He has licensed furniture lines with a number of the industry's most respected partners, including Lexington Furniture, Castell, Eastern Accents, Cravat, and Nourrisson. His work has frequently appeared in luxury consumer publications like Decor, lifestyle magazines, as well as on NBC's Today Show, Extra, ABC, CBS, Fox, and HGTV. Joining us from California via Skype is Barclay Butera. Barclay, welcome.
Thank you so much.
As I start with a lot of our interviews, we have young listeners who many are in university right now. Some are thinking about careers in design, and I'd love to hear a little bit about what Barclay was like as a young man, and maybe some about your early influencers and influences.
You know, I actually grew up with a father that was extremely entrepreneurial, and my mother. So I would say as a young child, I was taught the whole drive aspect of like being more. And so the opportunities that I had with my family, my mother was in the interior design business and still is today. So I grew up in the interior design business, and my dad was in publishing. Both of them had, a very humble beginnings, and then both achieved quite a bit of success. And so I was given that model of how to be more than what I was, as a child. So that drive was instilled in me at a very young age. And I worked in the interior design business from childhood with my mother up until my early teens, and then proceeded on into college, a little bit of graduate school, and then went back to the family business in Newport Beach.
Wow. Well, you definitely have this in your blood.
Yes, I do.
So besides your parents, any other influencers as you kind of grew into young manhood and into your own business? Any other people that you would say were in along the way, maybe mentors?
From the standpoint of mentors, I really believe that my parents were the biggest mentors in my life. I did have employers along the way that obviously were entrepreneurs, successful, that I worked for, that I had the good example of their careers. So I would say along the way, I've been influenced by a lot of different people, but primarily my parents were that driving force.
Gotcha. Well, that totally makes sense. And that gives the answer to my next question, which was kind of why interior design? Well, it was a natural for you. How did you find navigating the furniture industry as you grew from interiors and you're developing your own products and so forth? How have you found navigating this industry?
Actually, because I have showrooms that sell a lot of furniture products from, High Point and elsewhere. Really, I was educated through the process of being a very good buyer, a very good interior designer, and combining those skills and creating showrooms. And those showrooms are living, breathing, representations of my skills, my taste, and how I've approached the furniture industry.
Well, speaking of your taste, what do you feel, at least today, maybe you can give me a little transition where you started and then today, your stylistic influences. How do you feel your style has changed and or developed over the last few years?
I actually have a number of coffee table books, and one of them is called Past, Present, and Inspired. And over the years, I've owned 22 homes that would range from 30 years old to today, and it's a very good representation of kind of that country cottage, bright floral Americana feel that I started with in my showrooms, and then I've progressed very quickly into a much more sophisticated palette. So, did come from that era of slip-covered furniture and, pine and, really that era of those days. This was before Pottery Barn Home, before Z Gallery, before any of those, home stores that are much more accessible. We really started a look that was not available elsewhere.
Understood. Yeah, I was thinking, and I noticed in looking at some of the projects you've recently done, you had an excellent handle on applying contemporary to situations and blending styles that in some ways people might think are quite unique on their own, and yet you blend them so well in some of your designs. Where did that come from?
We've actually had a very good opportunity to merchandise product and cross-merchandise product. So it isn't always about transitional. It might be transitional with touches of traditional. And we've really become well-known nationally, internationally for our merchandising skills.
Excellent. That's I kind of had a feeling that's where you were headed with that. It makes so much sense with what you're doing already in your showrooms. You mentioned one of your coffee table books. You give it. How many others do you have?
I have a total of 5.
What's the most recent one? Is that the one you mentioned earlier?
No, Modern Living, which came out March of last year.
Okay, all right. That's for our listeners to go and get right away.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move along. I'm going to ask a little bit about, because many of our listeners, again, are students and young people thinking about getting into this business. Can you tell us a little bit about your creative process? It's in the world of music. It's is it the music? Is it the words? What comes first? I don't want to use an overused term would be ideating, but I'm not going to use that term. I just said it, but forget I said that. Let's talk about how you. How do ideas come to you? How do you work through something to get to a final solution, either for a client or in the case of more recent things, such as the Lexington collection you're about to roll out this year? How does that come to you?
I am very much inspired by travel and fashion, and cinema, I should say. So if you take a blend of all 3 areas, I do get inspired by vintage aspects, by great fashion designers dating back to like Bill Blass or Halston, the tailoring aspects of what they did, and current day to Ralph Lauren's influences on both home and fashion are very much inspiring to me. And then, I love old cinema, kind of like Auntie Mame meets Down with Love, these kind of these great films that really focus on interior design are inspiring to me. And then I could be traveling to Venice Beach, California, or Venice, Italy, and get inspiration just by the people that are around me, the hotels I stay at, the furniture stores, antique stores that I visit. So there's an inspiration that comes from many, many aspects of my life.
Well, now, I seem to remember seeing a picture of a Rolls Royce and you in a very, very nice jacket. Tell me the story of where that photo came from.
Well, I was asked, I developed a relationship with Rolls-Royce many years ago, and then they sponsored my 20-year anniversary 4 years ago. And then about a year and a half ago, I guess, they approached me about designing a Rolls-Royce for Rolls-Royce motor cars. And I was able to do that. I went to London and worked with their team over there. And then I had the opportunity of presenting it in Carmel at Concours d'Elegance last August. So,
Wow.
and the car ended up selling to a client, actually ended up being the Miami dealer bought it for, the Miami Rolls-Royce dealer bought it for his wife.
Well,
So, yeah, the hashtag on it is Yacht on Wheels. And if you look up Barclay Butera Rolls-Royce, it comes up very quickly.
it's very good looking, I have to say. I like nautical themes, and it really is sharp. Very nicely done. Looking at the various license collections and other things you're doing, did you ever sit down and say, how many different products have I designed? I mean, you here's a car, and you've got fabrics, and you've got, I mean, floor coverings and furniture, and how many has it been? Do you ever keep track?
It's interesting because when I see the list of license partners that you listed, it's probably at least double what you listed, and I don't really look at all the product all at once. It's almost like done in stages. So I'm not always like, thinking, okay, I'm going to design wood flooring this week and I'm going to design furniture next week. It all tends to be a blend. So I really have the great opportunity of representing a lot of home products, and am blessed that I got the opportunity to do so.
Well, how did that start? What was the first licensing situation that you got involved in?
I was originally approached by Kravit Textiles to do a line for them,
Hmm.
and have ended up doing 7 fabric books. We're working on 2 more right now,
Wow.
and then an extensive line of carpets for them. So I would say, my first segue into licensing was with Kravit.
Wow. That's great. And what a great company to start with. Perfect.
Yes,
I
wonderful.
imagine it's been a learning experience.
Yeah, it actually has been a very nice experience. And, you learn along the way, and trial and error is important. And I feel like that I've, learned a lot and have been able to apply those learning lessons to future uh, license opportunities so I don't make the same mistake.
Well, and that brings me to, because I think all of us, and I've been in this business about 46 years, and don't repeat that to anyone. But and there's no one listening, yes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, we all learn from those, I guess we'll call them failures, and we learn from the successes. But I'm thinking we learn more from the failures than we do from the successes. And certainly, I think you just kind of mentioned that in your own. Do you have any examples of either that you might share with some young students that are out there?
I think everything's relationship based, and it's important that you choose the right partner. And so I'm very, very in tune with who I work with well, and what kind of personality types that I work with well. And that goes with clients in interior design, that goes with relationships with licensing. It runs across the board in what I do in my industry with, I have 48 employees, working with that large of a staff kind of, teaches you a lot. Being an employer for a large company, a large interior design firm, and then having the different arms to my company that I do, really causes me to be a great communicator, and enjoying what I love to do. And so it's actually developed over the years, and there hasn't been a specific, oh, well, this is going to go this direction or go that direction. It's been an organic growing process.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation about the fact that you'd been an employee at one time in your career, and then now you really are running your own organization, and there's a logical transition from employee to the boss, if you will. How do you feel that transition occurred for Barclay Butera? How do you see, when you compare yourself as an employee to yourself now as an influencer, that change? How do you feel about what occurred in you?
My business is 24 years old, and before I started my own company in 1994, I actually worked with my mother, and opened her Southern California office on my own. So when I basically started her office in Southern California, she worked in Palo Alto and maintained an office up there. And then my father passed away and she moved down. So I was an employee of the family, and specifically my mother, and then having to like kind of meld the two of us together, I found that it might be best for me to go out on my own and venture out into the world. And so when I did that in 1994, I learned a lot about running a company, and we grew it incredibly fast. So I would say the first year we probably went from 0 employees to 10 plus employees. So it was a very fast growth situation. In the 2000s, we were over 130 employees. So, and I used to own a manufacturing plant. So again, along the way, I've learned a lot. And I've learned what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
That is probably one of the greatest lessons I guess one could learn in anything, any business, I guess. And I imagine that things that you are not at the top of your game and you're feeling, and I did this in my business world as well, you end up having others help you along the way to do that or take over that end of things, and then they report to you. And it's funny how reporting to someone and now they're reporting to you is a kind of an interesting transition in one's life, don't you feel?
I do feel that way. I also, though, have a very interactive executive staff that's young, and I learn a lot from them. We gather together every Monday morning and kind of go over our goals for that week. And I would say that it's a collaboration to run my company. It's not just me running it, but I have a great team that runs it with me.
So it's a collaborative culture, you would say, is your business.
Correct. It's not like the hierarchy of me being the owner president, but it's really about me working with the senior staff and trying to create like an entire community of employees that all feel like they're integrated. So I'm much more that high tech feel of a company where we're all one big family.
Barclay, I've got a couple of thoughts that occurred to me during our previous conversation earlier on. One of them was in furniture, how do you find the differences between designing for, let's say, floor covering lamps and so forth, and now designing furniture lines, actual physical, wood veneers and other materials, mixed media, etc. When you get to that, do you find that a different type of designing for you than a lamp line, or maybe more importantly for comparison purposes, a fabric line? Hard surface versus fabric.
I think fabric is, because it's organic in feel and there's so many different materials to fabric and so many different applications to fabric, it does tend to be different than designing furniture. Because, when I go to design bedding collections or I go to design carpets, it's much, much different than designing textile. The textiles design actually applies to bedding because I'm really dealing with textiles applied to bedding. But when I'm designing like wood flooring, the wood flooring runs everything from coastal to what I would put in Atlanta, Georgia, or what would I put in Boca Raton. So it really, I try to hit, with Du Chateau flooring, I have, I think, 19 wood species, or 19 finishes that are different wood species that can hit like a national market. So the whole goal when I go to license for products is how am I going to spread out the sales ability of that product. So it's much more taking into consideration creative and sales ability to both sides of that product that I create.
When you present, I'm assuming something here that may not be in reality. When you're presenting, let's say, the product that you've created for Du Chateau, Are you also engaged in presenting this to their sales force and marketing team at a show that they're going to roll it out at? Are you involved in that as well?
Yes, I always get involved with the sales force. So,
Right.
like right now, my largest introduction for High Point will be Castell, and Castell's a very high-end outdoor product that'll be introduced at High Point. Very unusual in its collection, and different applications of finishes. But I'll also have new products with Bradburn Lighting, Left Bank Art, Mirror Image Home, Norasan carpets, Winfield Tyboni wallpaper. As I said before, I'm working on some new textile collections for Kravet. And
Wow, you are going to be all over town here in High Point.
I will be all over town. That is for sure.
We
So
need to have a parade in your honor first. That way
yeah,
everyone can see you. And then
yeah,
that is great.
yeah, I'm very, very blessed that I have a lot of licensed partners that, we have the opportunity to work together and collaborate. Great people that I work with.
Now, I understand the Lexington brands you mentioned; those are going to be more towards the October market.
Yes, it'll be two large collections for the October market. We are focusing on quote unquote the new traditional. I really feel like there's a trend to go back to it. I feel that we have a lot of transitional product in the marketplace.
Yes.
And I'm going to go and bring it back to where I started, which is much more traditional and grounding. It'll have elements of transitional, but really it's a traditional product that you don't see today in High Point.
Well, that kind of brings up a question that I had in mind, and it brings it up earlier than I intended, but it's a good juncture to ask it. Future direction of this industry in terms of design. You just mentioned one thing you hadn't seen done, and you thought it was about time to do. Are there any other trends that either you think are on the wane, or trends that are heading our direction, or coming back, or something new that you see popping up in the marketplace now?
I think that there's so many different designers in this industry and so many different interpretations of good design, that a lot of people go a lot of different directions that I would necessarily not go. Because again, being a businessman, I think about how this product is going to be received in the marketplace and who my ultimate consumer is. So I really look at licensing from the standpoint is that it is a business, and these people that are creating relationships with me are expecting sales. So it's not just creating pretty things, but pretty things that'll sell. So that's really, and that's done with color and scale and mixed media materials and finishes. And, really there's a lot of interesting things that I do. I mean, I'm working on a paint deal where I will have exclusive paints in my name. So it's, kind of really runs the gamut in what I'm going to put, where am I going to put myself in the home category?
Understood. Yeah. Well, I understood. I imagine that is in some cases, maybe a little, a constant struggle of awareness of keeping yourself kind of true to yourself.
My brand. Yeah, true to my brand. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, on your, I'm going to go back to my days as a merchant and sales manager, and I wore a lot of hats in this business. But the thing I remember is, in many cases, if there was a designer involved in the launch of a licensed product line, quite often that designer would be asked to do personal appearances at key retailer organizations. Have you had occasion to do that with any of your licensed brands?
Yeah, really the largest brands I always do personal appearances for. So, I mean, if I'm asked to do a personal appearance, I'm there for them. If I'm asked to do a book signing, I'm there for them. I think it's super important that there is a face to the name and a personality to the name. And I think that makes you more sellable, more real. The buyers understand you better. So I am a firm believer in making personal appearances.
How do you find when you're in those personal appearances and you've got consumers, actual people who are going to be buying and using your products, coming up to you and asking you questions, you find those questions generally pretty to the point?
Oh, you get your obscure questions, but I would say for the most part, these people are really curious on, how I got to where I am today. And, they also ask a lot about the product and my choice on color, because I'm very much a person of color and understand editing color.
Do you find younger people asking tougher questions, or are the older, more healed folks asking tougher questions?
I get it from both sides, because the younger people are curious on how to start a career and what are the processes to start a career in the interior design business. And I would say, it's much harder now than it was when I started. And I think that, going out into this world, it's not as easy to make a name for yourself as it was when I started. So I feel like, these people, these younger students and so on, really require a lot of guidance and a lot of support and a lot of mentoring to get through the tough times, because it is a different era in interior design. We do have the millennials that are approaching, purchasing homes and purchasing product for their homes right now, and will be significant buyers, I think, by 2025, 26. There's supposed to be 50% of the purchasing power in this country. And so when we look at the direction of where brick and mortar and interior design is going, this segment of the world doesn't purchase like I did or yourself. They purchase more with memories, of their travels. They purchase more with stories of product. There's a lot more to it than we have in the past thought about. So when I'm designing product, I'm also thinking like, what's going to sell 5 years from now to the millennials that want a story, that want to know that we're contributing to charity, that we're active in environmental issues. There's all kinds of things that are important to them that really we haven't talked about in the past. So, and they're very much into renting and traveling, and they'll ultimately be buying their first home. I just think it's going to be a little bit later in their life when they buy their first home.
Boy, that was a tremendously well put description of the millennials and where they're going and where they're headed. I thank you for that. You were involved with decorating Pandora House here in High Point. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience and how you felt about it? You were here, I think, a little over a week ago?
Actually, I was there exactly a week ago. And Ridvan, who owns Eastern Accents, actually purchased Pandora's Manor and had a dream of making this a high-end bed and breakfast that represented the best of interior design in High Point. So it was a collaboration between a lot of interior designers. Myself and Tom Felicia did a suite in the manor, but Alexa Hampton, Celery Kimball, Madcap Cottage, and why am I missing one? Alexa Hampton, Madcap. Oh, Toby Farley. Farley, yeah. So we all got involved in this project, and I think that it was a real coup from Ridvan's standpoint. I've worked with Eastern Accents in licensing now, I would say for 5+ maybe 7 years. And so when Ridvan came and asked me to do this for him, obviously he's a huge supporter of my brand. I in no way was going to say no. This is an opportunity that I really, really found to be fun, and working with other great interior designers. This was a wonderful experience. We did a sleepover for 2 nights at the manor. We slept in our own suites, and we wore Pandora Manor pajamas, and we had pajama fights and pillow fights, and it was a very fun. And he brought in separate chefs each night, and we experienced good food in the kitchen. It was
Isn't that a wonderful kitchen where everyone can sit around and chat?
Yeah, I would say that it's something you'd want to see at market.
We're placing that invitation out there for everyone who's listening right now. Come see Pandora House when you come to market. Well, congratulations on that, because I think we're going to be hearing about that whole collection of great talent, including yourself, that worked on that project, and I think we're going to be hearing much more about the Pandora House and all the things around it that Ritvin's got planned.
Yeah, it was a fun project.
Well, you've given us a few words of wisdom for students, really some really good ones. Is there anything else you'd like to say to those listening who are about to attempt to get into this business, or are going to graduate soon and hang their shingle up and try to get going?
I think it's important for younger people today to understand that maybe internships are going to be very important to their lives, much more so than they have been in the past. They need to learn from others. There's a whole new billing process. There's a whole new approach to interior design. There has to be added value service to what you do. So it's not just product that you sell or you curate any longer or create. It's creating value to the actual interior design service. So why do these people need an interior designer? Why do they want to hire and spend money on an interior designer? You've got to convince them that I'm worth it, that I'm worth the dollar that you're going to spend on interior design. So a lot of people, the web has changed this industry enormously. I happen to be blessed and have 20 interior designers that work in my umbrella or under my umbrella. And all of these people are extremely experienced and have experienced a lot on their own, and have come to work for my organization because we have a really tight run organization where I do my own shipping and receiving. I do all my trucking, warehousing, everything, all the expediting process is done in-house with my company. Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking a lot of that applies to product design as well.
I actually think that certain things are lost or becoming a lost skill, where people aren't so much involved in the manufacturing process. They more want like the glamour of being an interior designer. So the craftsmanship of furniture and lighting and everything that you see in products in High Point is changing because the younger generation doesn't want to work in the labor side of furniture and exactly. So if there's anybody that needs to recruit people for their industries, I would say that those industries are lacking that whole manual labor aspect of like becoming a creator of certain items. I can dream something up. I can provide, designs, but someone has to interpret those designs and make them real 3D come to life pieces. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about on the other side of creation. It's the manufacturers that need to create what I'm dreaming, and we have to have like a collaboration together. So I'm very good at what I do, and then manufacturers are very good at what they do. I would imagine that on the manufacturing side, they are lacking that younger generation.
Well put. Well put. Well, we come to the end of our little show here, and Barclay, I really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me today. I appreciate your your good influences that you've now passed on verbally to our listeners. Thank you so much for that, and wish you great success coming up in at the April market and beyond with all the things that you have going.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Barclay Butera for joining me today to discuss his experiences growing up in the interior design industry, the importance of a collaborative workplace culture, and his journey to becoming one of today's iconic lifestyle brands. Design Between the Lines is produced by Element Studio with the American Society of Furniture Designers. We're recorded in High Point, North Carolina. To learn more about ASFD, visit asfd.com, and don't forget to subscribe to hear more industry stories of design between the lines.